Ethan had always believed his life was ordinary. Living in a small town nestled by the coast, he worked as a mechanic, fixing everything from cars to broken appliances. His world revolved around routine: wake up early, eat a quick breakfast, work long hours, and come home to his modest apartment. There was nothing out of the ordinary about him. At least, that's what he thought, until the letter arrived. It was a Thursday evening when the envelope arrived. Simple, unmarked, except for a strange symbol: a lighthouse standing tall against crashing waves. The letter inside was just as peculiar. It began with a simple sentence: "You have inherited the lighthouse on Cormac Cliff. Please come as soon as possible." Ethan had never heard of Cormac Cliff or the lighthouse. No one in his family had ever mentioned it. He'd never known of any relative who had owned such a thing. It didn't make sense. Yet something about the letter felt oddly familiar, as if a part of him had always known this day would come. Curiosity gnawed at him. He hadn't felt this intrigued in years. Maybe it was the unknown, or perhaps the sense that his ordinary life might be about to change. Either way, he couldn't ignore it. He packed a bag and took the next bus out to the cliffs. The journey to the lighthouse, it took him hours to get there. The lighthouse was located in a remote part of the coastline, far from the town and hidden by tall, thick trees. As Ethan walked up the winding road leading to the cliff's edge, the wind picked up. The air smelled salty, and the crashing waves below echoed against the jagged rocks. The view was breathtaking, but the sight of the lighthouse made his chest tighten. The lighthouse stood tall, its white and black stripes weathered and chipped by the years. It was tall, towering over the landscape, casting a shadow that stretched long over the rocky cliff. There was an eerie quietness about it, as if the lighthouse itself had been waiting for him. He approached the door slowly, his boots crunching on the gravel. The door was old, made of heavy wood, with iron hinges rusted over time. A thick chain wrapped tightly around the handle, locking it in place. It wasn't just a chain. It was like something meant to keep whatever was inside from escaping. A sense of unease washed over him. Why was the lighthouse locked? A strange, unexplainable compulsion led him to knock on the door. Knock. Knock. The sound echoed, carrying in the wind. Nothing happened for a long moment, and Ethan stood there staring at the door. He felt foolish. Why had he knocked? Who would answer? But then, just as he was about to turn away, he heard something. A knock. It wasn't his. It came from behind the door, and it was faint. Soft at first, like someone hesitant. But it was there. Knock, knock. Ethan froze. His heartbeat quickened. Who, or what, was on the other side of that door? The mysterious knock. He stepped back, feeling his pulse race in his chest. His mind screamed that it was all just a trick of his imagination. But deep down, a strange sensation lingered. That knock wasn't something his mind had made up. It was real. He wasn't alone. He stood there for several moments, unsure of what to do. The wind howled around him, but the lighthouse remained eerily still. The door was still locked, the chain still wrapped tightly around the handle. But that knock was unmistakable. Something was waiting for him. And whatever it was, it had been waiting for a long time. Ethan glanced around, looking for any sign of life, but he was utterly alone. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the letter again. It had no return address, no signature. Just a mysterious symbol of the lighthouse, the same one he had seen on the envelope. He glanced at the cliffs around him, the wild sea crashing against the rocks. The place was alive with nature, yet the lighthouse seemed different. There was something hidden, something that called out to him, urging him to understand. But hidden. Door below, unable to shake the feeling that the lighthouse was hiding something important, Ethan decided to explore further. He circled the lighthouse, his boots clicking on the stone path. The back of the lighthouse was overgrown with weeds and ivy. He pushed through the thick vegetation, his hands brushing against the rough texture of the walls. Then he found it. There beneath the lighthouse was a small, weathered wooden door. It wasn't as big as the front door, but it was just as old, with the same heavy iron hinges and chain lock. This door, however, was different. The chain seemed new, almost out of place compared to the rusted locks above. Something about this door felt urgent, as if it had been locked for a reason. Ethan reached forward, his fingers brushing the cold metal. He felt a chill run down his spine. Why was there a second door? Why hadn't he been told about this? The mystery was becoming too much to ignore. He turned around, glancing at the open sea and the narrow, steep cliffs that surrounded the lighthouse. It was as if the world itself had forgotten this place. His heart pounded as he lifted the latch and pulled the door open. A gust of air hit him, cool and damp, carrying the scent of the sea. He stepped inside cautiously, his eyes adjusting to the dim light. The room below was small, lit only by the faint glow of a lantern hanging in the corner. It was like a hidden chamber, a secret room that the lighthouse had kept locked away for years. The walls were lined with dusty shelves, filled with ancient books and odd artifacts. But what caught his attention the most was the table in the center of the room. On it was an old, faded map, spread open with strange markings on it. It was a map of the coastline, but there were symbols and lines that didn't make sense. Symbols he had seen before. Symbols that matched the one on the letter. Suddenly he heard it again, a knock. Faint, yet unmistakable. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He wasn't alone down here. Whatever had been knocking earlier, it wasn't a figment of his imagination. The lighthouse had been waiting for him, and now the time had come to uncover its secret. Ethan stood in the dimly lit room beneath the lighthouse, staring at the strange map spread out on the old wooden table. His mind raced, trying to make sense of the bizarre symbols and markings. They looked like something out of an ancient storybook, their meaning lost to time. But there was one thing he was certain of. They were connected to the lighthouse, to the strange knock he had heard earlier, and to the secrets buried deep beneath the cliffs. His heart raced as he traced a finger along the lines of the map. The coastline was familiar, but some areas were marked with strange symbols, symbols that were eerily similar to the one on the letter. It was almost as if the map was leading him somewhere, guiding him to something hidden in the darkness of the sea. Then the knock came again. Knock. Knock. It was louder this time, more urgent. Ethan felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. He turned, his breath catching in his throat. The knock didn't come from above, from the door he had opened, but from the far corner of the room, near the stone wall. The lantern flickered, casting shadows that danced across the room like living creatures. The air grew colder. Ethan's instincts screamed at him to run, to leave the lighthouse and never return. But something deep inside him told him that he had to stay. He was here for a reason. The lighthouse had chosen him, and the mystery was far from over. The hidden passage. He moved cautiously toward the corner of the room where the knock had sounded. His footsteps echoed in the silence, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. As he reached the wall, he noticed something strange. There was a small crack in the stone, barely visible to the naked eye. It was as if the wall itself had been deliberately built to hide something. Without thinking, Ethan pressed his hand against the crack. It was cold, colder than the rest of the room. Suddenly the stone shifted. He stepped back, his heart pounding as the wall slowly began to slide open. A hidden passage revealed itself, leading deeper into the heart of the lighthouse. The air that rushed out from the passage was thick, damp, and heavy with a strange energy. Ethan hesitated for a moment, then stepped inside, driven by a force he couldn't explain. The passage was narrow, barely wide enough for him to walk through, but it stretched on for what felt like miles, twisting and turning like a labyrinth. The deeper he went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The walls of the passage were lined with old, decaying candles that flickered weakly, casting long shadows. The stone floor was rough under his feet, and the air was thick with the scent of salt water and something else, something ancient. At the end of the passage, Ethan found a large, circular chamber. It was dimly lit, but the source of the light was unlike anything he had ever seen. In the center of the room stood a large stone pedestal, upon which rested a small, intricately carved box. The box was made of dark wood, and strange symbols covered its surface, symbols that matched those on the map and the letter. It was clear now. This box was the key. He stepped forward, his hand trembling as he reached for the box. The moment his fingers brushed against the wood, the air around him seemed to pulse with energy. The knock came again, louder this time, echoing through the chamber. It was as if the lighthouse itself was alive, responding to his touch. Ethan opened the box. Inside, there was a small, glowing crystal. It emitted a soft, otherworldly light, casting eerie shadows on the walls. The crystal seemed to hum with power, and Ethan could feel its energy vibrating through his fingertips. It was unlike anything he had ever experienced. Before he could fully process what was happening, the ground beneath him trembled. The walls of the chamber began to shake, and a low rumble filled the air. The knock came again, but this time it wasn't just a sound. It was a presence, something ancient and powerful, rising from the depths of the lighthouse. The awakening. Suddenly, the entire room was bathed in a blinding light. Ethan shielded his eyes, his heart racing as the light grew brighter and brighter. When it finally faded, he found himself standing in the middle of a vast open space. The walls of the chamber were gone, replaced by an endless sea stretching out before him. The sky above was a deep, dark purple, filled with swirling clouds that seemed to pulse with energy. Ethan looked around in disbelief. This wasn't the lighthouse anymore. This wasn't even the world he knew. He was standing in the heart of something ancient, something that existed long before the lighthouse had ever been built. The crystal in his hand was glowing brightly now, casting an ethereal light across the strange landscape. And then, he heard it, a voice. It was deep, ancient, and yet it felt strangely familiar, like a voice he had heard in his dreams. It came from all around him, echoing in the air, filling his mind. "You have come. At last the chosen one has arrived." Ethan's breath caught in his throat. Who are you?" "I am the spirit of the lighthouse." "I am the keeper of the sea. For centuries I have waited for one who could unlock the secrets of the lighthouse and awaken the power that lies beneath. You are the one who will shape the future of this world, the one who will decide whether we sink into darkness or rise into light." The voice seemed to echo within him, filling him with a strange sense of both fear and awe. He was standing on the edge of something much greater than he could comprehend. The lighthouse, the map, the knock, they were all connected to this moment. But what did it all mean? "You have the power to change the course of history, Ethan. The lighthouse has chosen you because you are not like the others. You are a child of both land and sea, born to bridge the gap between worlds. But be warned, the path ahead is not without sacrifice. Choose wisely." Ethan's mind raced. He had never asked for this. He had never even known that the lighthouse existed, let alone that it held such power. But the voice was clear. He had been chosen for something bigger than himself, and now the future of the world rested in his hands. The final decision as the voice faded, Ethan found himself back in the stone chamber. The crystal in his hand had stopped glowing, but its presence still lingered, a faint hum in the air. The door behind him creaked, and the passage that led out of the chamber was now open. He could leave. He could walk away from the lighthouse, forget everything he had seen, and return to his old life. But something told him that if he did, the world would never be the same. The power of the lighthouse, the secrets it held, would slip away, and the opportunity to shape the future would be lost forever. Ethan took a deep breath and made his decision. He stepped forward, walking toward the light that now filled the passage. The lighthouse had chosen him, and he would not turn away. The knock had been the beginning. Now the true story of the lighthouse and his place within it was only just beginning.